Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I'm your host, Mark Gabberty, the content marketing expert, bringing you 5 new episodes every week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. Hello, Breakthrough Success listeners. I just wanted you all to know before the episode actually starts, I've been working a little bit behind the scenes to give you something really special. So a while ago, I wrote my book, Content Marketing Secrets, which helps people create, promote, and optimize their content for growth and revenue. And I just put the finishing touches together to offer that for free to anyone who is interested. So if you want your free copy of Content Marketing Secrets, all you have to do is head over to markgabberty.com/book. Now, let's jump right into the episode. Everyone in business is trying to build their business and reach out to more people. But in addition to reaching out and doing things now, you also have to think into the future. You also have to think, how am I going to thrive now, but also thrive in the future? And in this episode, we are going to focus on how you can build your own business that thrives into the future. Today's guest is an experienced change practitioner, success accelerator, and author. His newest book, Next is Now, 5 Steps for Embracing Change, Building a Business that Thrives into the Future, provides expertise, insights, and actionable tools to empower individuals and business leaders to embrace change and build careers and companies that thrive both now and in the future. Today's guest for episode 194 of the Breakthrough Success Podcast is none other than Lior Arussy. Lior, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Great pleasure to join you, Mark.
It is a pleasure to have you on the show. And when you have the business growth mindset, it's very tempting to think exclusively in the short term. So I'm really looking forward to talk about this long-term approach also and planning for the future so that you're still thriving and also just to recap, like now and also in the future. But before we get into all of that, I'm wondering if you could share with us the inspiration behind your book, Next is Now. Why did you write it?
Well, thank you for the question, because actually a book starts as a love affair, but really is starting to demand so much of you that sometimes you are wondering, why are we doing this? And is it really all worth it? The book was born after really seeing many organizations, and more importantly, their employees, struggling with changes that were so obvious to the outside viewer, yet they were fighting it in so many ways that sometimes you wanted to just shake them and say, come on, guys, you've got to get out of this victimhood. And when we work with them, either through workshops or the consulting work, I mean, you felt bad. And I was trying to find a way, a platform to have a very direct conversation with every employee who cares and with every individual who cares and say, guys, the future is not going to wait for you. And if you're going to ignore it, you're going to lose relevance in the marketplace. So don't wait for your CEO to make those decisions. You need to own the future. You need to make yourself relevant moving forward. So the inspiration was, our experience with over 1 million employees that we worked through either training, workshops, consulting, and we saw them struggling. And we said to ourselves, there must be a better way where they can actually see the reality better and find the next and the future inspirational and not a threat.
And I like how you're thinking about the mindset of the future. And like the way we view the future, I mean, that affects what kind of future is going to be waiting for us. And I feel like no matter how often people hear about like, this is the new trends, this is something that you need to know to continue to be successful in the future, we are just so resistant to change. And I'm wondering if you could share with us just why it's so difficult for us to change and how we can actually embrace it.
So the common thinking around why people are fighting change is often focused on what we call future-based fear, which is I'm afraid to do something I haven't done. I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm not sure I can do it. And a lot of the literature in change management focus on how do you shift people from point A to the future point. And what we discovered in our work is that the fear is actually much deeper than that. And the fear focused on the past and the identity of those who are being asked to change. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. When people hear the word change, what they hear is a negative judgment on the past. So if for 10 years I did one thing and now you tell me to do something else, what I heard is that you just told me that the last 10 years were a waste of my time or they were wrong. And people were struggling with where do I file the last 10 years? I can't just go and erase them. I can't just go and say they didn't exist. And more importantly, I can't accept that they were a waste. Deeper than that, if I associate myself with a certain tool, with a certain process, and now you tell me to change that, now I'm losing my identity. I'm like, I was the person who was doing that, and now you're telling me that I'm not going to do it. So what we found out, first and foremost, is change needs to have an authentic bridge between the past and the future for people to be able to accelerate change. And we need to allow them to see the connection and the evolution as opposed to a departure from the past and into the future. And that's one of the core tenets of the book, is how to build that bridge between the past and the future and overcome the past-based fear in order to be ready for the future.
And in your book, you mentioned there are 5 steps for embracing change, and as you put it, creating that bridge from past to future. And I'm wondering if you could go a little deeper into those 5 steps for embracing change.
Of course. Thank you for bringing it up. So after you overcome and you understand kind of this meta fear that we talked about, the past-based fear, in next is now we are actually, well, I'm actually analyzing so where do you get stuck on the journey? Where do you resist change? So step number 1 is face it. Face it is all about the rational side of change, which is there are certain facts that you are not willing to accept, even though they are obvious to everybody else around you. In fact, I'll give you a small example. I was working with a bank, and one of the bankers there said, "Oh, if I'm going to do this change, are you going to guarantee me my job?" And I said, "Let me tell you something. Actually, I'm going to guarantee you when you won't have a job, and that is if you don't do the change. But if you will do the change, you have a better chance of keeping your job, but there are no guarantees." Face it is all about helping people get out of the victimhood that they exhibit toward change, and face the facts. We call it sit in your CEO seat. You be the judge of the facts, and you tell us what are you going to do about it. So for step number 1, face the facts objectively. Phase number 2 is analyze it. And in that regard, we are recognizing that there are emotions associated with change. There are emotions that are bubbling there and are holding us back. And we want people to recognize them, to understand why they're there, and then be able to muster the courage to overcome them. But without recognizing the emotions, even if you know all the rational facts, phase 1 will not be sufficient. Phase 3 is redefine it. Remember how we talked about that bridge that we need to build between the past and the future? That bridge is what I call core cause. The impact that you make on people should define you, not the processes that you use. So if I go back to the banking example, and I told to that banker, the banker was complaining that the bank is now forcing them to use iPads. And I said, look, as a banker, you were always there making an impact on people. What do you think that impact was? And it took them some time, but eventually they discovered it. And they said, we're helping people live their dreams through financial tools. I said, bingo. You see, once upon a time, you used an abacus. Then you use a calculator. Then you use a desktop. And now you're using an iPad. The abacus didn't define you, and the iPad doesn't define you. Those are tools. If you see yourself as the person who are helping people, your core cause is to help them fulfill their dreams through financial tools, then you are freeing yourself to start experimenting with new tools, because the tools do not define you. You're an impact creator. You're not a process operator. And that we found to be really a true aha moment, a liberating moment when people stop associating themselves with the tool or the process, but rather focus on the impact that they make on people and then free themselves to experiment with new tools. Phase number 4 is grow it. So even though you understand the facts rationally, you understand the emotional engagement that you have here, you understand how to redefine your role to be an impact creator, not a process operator, people then get stuck on the fear that they don't know how to do it. So that's when we give them space in the phase called grow it to actually experiment in a safe zone before they're going to go to the real life. Like any other actor who will never dare to go on stage unless they practice their line, they got into the character. We are doing the same thing in Grow It and applying the change to the daily routines, to the weekly routines, and to the yearly routines. And the last one is Own It. Own It is all about how do you make sure that in the future, when new change will come, you will not be that resistant. So this is about flexing the muscle of change resilience, as I call it in the book, and making sure that your mind is always open to experiment with new things. So when you see the next change, you don't default back to fighting it, but rather be more ready to implement it. So step 1, face it. Step 2, analyze it, redefine it, grow it, and then ultimately own it. Make yourself change resilient so you can be more relevant in the marketplace.
Lior, thank you for giving us that breakdown of those 5 steps for embracing change. And you do have to embrace change to thrive in the future. It's just something that everyone will have to do because obviously different trends, consumer preferences change. But just because we know as a fact that like you have to change to continue thriving in the future, I think one of the fears also of making changes is that you can make the wrong change. Like, let's say, for instance, that there are certain social networks that are really big when they first come out, but then they're not getting as much traction. Like Vine being a really great example of this. You go all in on Vine, you embrace that change, you don't do anything with any of the other social networks, then Vine stops, and then there goes your audience. So don't get me wrong, you have to change in order to thrive in the future with your business, but how do we find the right changes that we should be making?
And what you're raising is such an excellent point, and I want to amplify it and magnify it for a moment, if you'll indulge me.
Definitely.
Okay. So thinking about Vine. Let's go to those who are a little bit older with MySpace, and for those who are really, really on the cutting edge, Google actually had the first social media platform, but they didn't follow through with it. Let's go into FOMO, fear of missing out, because the amount of change that are hitting people today is so enormous that they don't even know how to prioritize. And we are all feeling like, hey, there are at least 200 other videos on YouTube of dancing cats that everybody else is talking about, but we are not included, and that's kind of not cool. And this is where the core cause is very critical, because the moment you know what is your compass, what is your impact on the world, you can then filter and say, this tool will help me, this tool is not. This tool will promote the agenda, the other one is not. And you're absolutely right, the tools often change. And, your audience might have been on Instagram and now they're on Periscope, and you need to know where you will make the maximum impact. So if your operating question is not what is the coolest tool, but rather how can I make the most impact on my audience, on the people that I want to make an impact on, then it doesn't matter if it's Reddit or Vine or whatever it is. You will constantly look for ways to engage with your audience, because your compass is not defining yourself as a Vine person or as a Facebook person or whatever, but rather as a person who makes an impact and is looking for the right tools to get there.
And I really like how you're focusing more on the purpose that the tool provides than relying on the tool itself, where you're just thinking about getting that engagement from the audience versus whether you are a Twitter, or Facebook, or a Vine focused individual. And I really like how you're also talking about the impact that people want to create. So I'm wondering if you could share with us, what do you believe holds most people back from creating the impact on their audiences that they want to have?
The most important thing is to understand the power you do have, not the power you don't have. And in the book, I'm talking about America's obsession with superheroes. And everybody have their own superheroes. If you look at the top 10 most grossing movies ever, you'll find at least 4 to 5 superheroes movies. And I talk about why we're so fascinated by superheroes and so on and so forth. For some people, it's a delegation of responsibility. You know, Superman, one day Superman will come and save the day. But for others, it's a form of inspiration of saying, I can do that too. And in the book, I talk about my favorite superhero, and his name is Captain Apathy. So Captain Apathy has all the powers of Superman, but none of the motivation. So he can, but he wouldn't. And this character, I'm playing with this character in order to basically send a message to every reader. You have more power that you can activate if you actually take a look and examine the power that you do have. At the moment of truth, when you're in front of people who need you, you can. We just need to want to. And I think this is the biggest obstacle. The biggest obstacle is that we are undermining the power that we do have. And instead of leveraging that power and celebrating that power and activating that power, we are telling ourselves what we cannot do, or all the things that we don't have. And we're waiting for the perfect time with all the tools and all the empowerment ready for us in order for us to be ready for it to happen. And my challenge to everyone is don't wait. Don't wait. You are there at the moment of truth. I want you to focus on the power you do have. And I want to share with you a small story. Do I have a moment for a small story?
Yes, definitely.
So let's take a small story. And I get inspired by participants in our programs who are going and making things happen and then share with us the story. That's what keeps us going, because change can be a very, very difficult process and people can fight you over it and stuff. So I'll give you a small story. A customer shows up in a New Jersey car dealership, and it's the snowiest day, and she got a flat tire. And she's bringing her car. All the loaner cars are gone. The shuttle of the dealership is stuck in a snowstorm. And at 2 p.m., the service advisor and the technician are trying to help her. But they're finding out that they don't have the tire. They don't have the tire in inventory, so they cannot really help her. They don't have a loaner. They don't have this. They don't have that. And technically, in the past, they would just go say, "Ma'am, sorry, you have to leave your car here. We don't have a spare tire for you, but we'll order it and go home." But instead, they focus on the power they do have. And they looked at her, and she looked very distressed. And they said, "Ma'am, what's wrong? Why are you so distressed?" And she said, at 4 o'clock, my son is playing indoor soccer, and I promised him to be there, and I need to be there. Now they're making a personal connection. They are fathers. She's a mother. They know breaking the promise to a kid is inexcusable. Now it became personal, and they're thinking, what can we do? We have to find a tire. We have to save the day. Now Captain Apathy becomes Superman. And they realize they have one tire available, but that tire is on a car in the showroom. They go to the showroom, they remove a tire from a car that's in the showroom in front of all the customers, install it in her car, and send her on her way. She started to cry, and she didn't stop. And she said, "No one ever treated me like that." This is a personal choice. This is a performance of impact creators, not process operator. The process operator will say, "Ma'am, I don't have it in my process, go home." But the impact creator said, "I'm going to find a way because it's personal, because it's a privilege to be of service." And the more we will look at our engagement with customers and with the future as a privilege like that, and leverage the power we do have, as opposed to playing victim and say, "I'm waiting for somebody to tell me to do it," the more powerful we're going to be, and the more we'll be able to embrace the change and inspire ourselves.
Leo, I really love that story, and just that whole idea where it seems like there is no possible option but going into the showroom and getting that tire now. I know that not everyone's going to be in that specific situation, but there are certain scenarios where you think a little outside the box, you think about the impact, and you're able to create an end result like that.
I think that in each situation, another interesting thing for you, okay? So America seemed to be one of the highest in charity countries in the world. Just give us a tragedy, give us a storm, give us a shooting in a high school, and we are all gonna go and volunteer, and we're gonna help people that we've never ever seen before, and we're gonna be there for them, and we're gonna send them money and flowers and whatever. And my challenge to people is, why can't you volunteer for your customers or your colleagues who are working with you or for your family members? Why can we bring the same generosity to the people who actually knows us, care about us, needs us, and oftentimes pay our bills? I think that if we can bring that approach and say, I do have the power and change does not threaten me, and I am an impact creator, I'm not a process operator, then we're going to free up our minds to experiment and try and not to be so rigid about the way we are thinking.
And one of the things like that is an interesting concept on the donation. I feel like we should donate just like more often charity and not just doing it when something really bad happens just to turn it into a habit. And I would like to shift gears a little bit. You were talking about challenges a little bit, and with that in mind, I'm wondering if you could share with us one big challenge you faced in your journey and a powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
One challenge that I faced in the journey and a lesson that I learned. Let me give you one. Let me give you one. So I had a situation where I trusted a client. It's a major transformation, and I trusted the client on certain things, and then I discovered that the client abused the trust. The client collected money from their customers, and I discovered that they were not delivering to the customers what they promised. And we were involved in that project. And we had a seven-figure to lose if we will walk away from the deal. And they because they knew it was a large number for us, they never ever believed that we'll walk away, because they said, oh, they're just like everybody else. They're gonna take the money and they're gonna keep their mouth shut. And I looked at the ethical code, and I said, you know what, guys, we're walking. We're not gonna endorse this behavior. We're not gonna be part of this behavior. You're using our name in the wrong way, and we just don't want to be part of it. And they were absolutely stunned. And I have to tell you, financially, it was devastating. Financially, I needed that money. I counted on that money. I did not have a replacement for that money. I had to go and scrape and find replacement for this that I just simply did not have. And that was a moment that all my employees were watching. What will we do? That is one of those defining moments where the employees are going to say, are we for real? Or this is just about cash is king? It was painful. Living by your values is a very painful thing to do. It's not that simple. Anybody who's going to stand up and tell you, yeah, I'm going to make the sacrifice, whatever, when you have payroll to make, when you have responsibility for families, sometimes you're going to try to cut corners. And on that specific one, I didn't cut corners. It cost me, but it was the right thing to do. And the message I want to share with a lot of people: look, living by your values comes with a price. Anybody who told you otherwise is just not being honest with you. But you need to be willing to make that sacrifice. So when you look yourself in when you look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you love the person that you see. But make no mistake, it's going to come with a price.
That's a really interesting challenge, and I can see how some of the values would like they conflict you from doing certain things, and like obviously we would like better financially to take the money, but then you have these thoughts in the back of your head, the ethical breach in a sense that you don't want to have to carry that with you for the rest of your life either.
Absolutely, but I want people to know living by values comes with a trade-off. You've got to be willing and ready to pay the price. And if you're not, you're fooling yourself.
And I mean, I do agree that there's a lot of sacrifice as we pursue any goal in general, and in like the values in certain circumstances. But you do, as you say, look yourself in the mirror and you are happy with the person you see. But a lot of our conversation has been around your book. And with that in mind, I'm wondering if you could share with us three great books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
So there are a couple of books that I hold dear. They might not be the most famous one out there, but for me they were very meaningful. Okay, the first one is called "Healing a Fractured World." It's a book that influenced me a great deal. It's by the author is Jonathan Sacks. He's a British author, and he's highlighting the importance of personal accountability and personal ownership. And that a book that I think will make everybody feel very, very positive about what you can do and focusing on that. Another one is a big influence on me is Love is the Killer App. It's a little bit of an older book by Tim Sanders, but Love is the Killer App is reminding us that at the end of the day, we're in the business of people. And in the business of people, it's people comes first. So we forget that. We always talk about, oh, it's business, it's not personal. Oh, it's sure as heck personal. Everything is personal these days. And if you don't understand that, you're going to miss the whole thing. And the last book, the third book that I would talk about is called Simply Brilliant by Bill Taylor, or William C. Taylor, the co-founder of Fast Company. And I think this book is helping people understand how it doesn't have to be so difficult to be great. And it's really about the small stuff and not about the one big thing. So, the number of Mark Zuckerbergs out there is we can count on one hand.
You're
But
right.
if each and every one of us will try to be simply brilliant in what we do, we will all raise up the power that we can make a difference on an organizational level, on a personal level. So, Healing a Fractured World, Love is the Killer App, and Simply Brilliant, that will cover you from finding your purpose, connecting to people, and unleashing the power of simplicity and brilliance.
Lior, thank you for sharing those great book recommendations. Those will all be in the show notes, markgilberti.com/E194. And for anyone interested in a book that will help them create, promote, and optimize their content for growth and revenue, you can grab my book, Content Marketing Secrets, over at markgilberti.com/book. And before we wrap up this episode, Lior, I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
The one question we need to ask ourselves more often is when somebody asked me about if I would put a billboard out there, what will be my billboard? And that billboard got connected to the word passion. So along the same lines, I would say, did you bring your passion to work today? Or did you bring your passion to everything you do? Because the passion is what's going to help you survive the difficulties, enjoy the moment that you are creating. And that's a question I want you to ask yourself. Everybody should ask themselves every day. Did you bring your passion to everything you do?
Lior, thank you for sharing with us that great question. And thank you again for sharing all of your great insights throughout our time together. And if you guys want to learn more about Lior, the best way to do that is to get his book, Next is Now, 5 Steps for Embracing Change. That will be in the show notes. But again, Lior, I do want to thank you just so much for taking the time to share your value with us. It was such a pleasure to have you on Breakthrough Success.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on your show, Mark, and wishing you a lot of good luck. You're almost there with 200. Hey, I'm 194.
Thank you. Yeah, we're almost there.
Good luck.
How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn